Interracial relationship content actually gives me the ick. And yes, I am in an interracial relationship, but I do not want to be an interracial relationship guru. Ultimately because I do not think being married to a white man is all that interesting. I don't actually have a don't date this man, but do date this man philosophy based on skin color. And that's not a conversation that I'm interested in because if we're honest, all men are a part of a power system. Different expressions, different behaviors, different aesthetics, different roles, but the same structure. So for me, it's far more interesting to explore or ask the question, why are women still orienting their lives around navigating men instead of freeing themselves from the structures that center them? If you haven't already, go ahead, subscribe to my channel, and let's get into my notes on how I started my deconstruction journey. When I was in Guatemala, I had this moment that, I don't know if you say something shifted, but I felt something differently. I was laying in a hammock watching a bird, and the bird had its wings spread wide, and it wasn't flying though, it was floating, trusting that the air would hold it. When the wind swelled, it lifted. When the air pulled back, the bird would drop. Not in a panic, never ever fluttered its wings because it trusted that there would be a new current to catch it. I had never seen a bird behave like this before, and maybe it's city life and maybe country folks are just rolling their eyes right now, but I remember thinking, how free is that? Not forcing, not gripping, not trying to control, just trusting. It was that moment that I realized something uncomfortable about myself, that moment was the freest that I had ever felt. It wasn't because my life was perfect. The whole reason that I ended up in Guatemala was because my life was falling apart. But I had stopped gripping. I had stopped trying to control every outcome. I was not organizing my existence around trying to hold something together. And I thought, I want to live more like that, to release, to stop holding on to things that I did not even fully understand the purpose of. And you know what? This is why we need nature. And this is why it's constantly being destroyed. Because there are reminders everywhere of who we are outside of the system. But the noise, survival, lack, constant seeking keeps us focused on identities that have already been defined. We don't create ourselves. We apply for roles. And I think women especially have far more potential than that. Far more interesting work to do than becoming experts in navigating men, their moods, their cultures, their hierarchies, their limitations, especially for us. I do meet a lot of women who move abroad and talk about freedom that they felt just from changing locations, but often it is attached to something in the system. Because let's be honest, a lot of women are not spending time discovering who they are before they start negotiating who they need to be in order to be loved. And I do not actually take romantic relationships that seriously. I never really have. Because I never believed that love was enough. Not in a heteronormative system. I remember being a pretty young child, listening to my mother cry through the pain of being beaten by a man who I assume claimed he loved her. And I would hear her utter the words, love, but I love him. And that explained the pain. And it explained why she was going to stay. Love did not feel like salvation to me. It seemed more like a condition, a kind of mental distortion that I did not want any part of. So I feel like I grew up a little different, prepared, aware that my survival could require things that I cannot say on the internet for legal purposes. And I think over time that just led me in a slightly different direction. But it did not stop me from seeking the idea of love, of performing it, of putting on a show, of trying to step in that role, of saying it and waiting for love to happen. Realizing that so many of our tears aren't actually attached to a person. They're attached to the system's conditioning of our worthiness to be loved. So I started deconstructing love, which led me to deconstruct religion, which led me to see how power operates across everything: relationships, belief systems, our identities. And once you start to see that, I think it's really hard to unsee it. So men, they're just not that interesting to me in the same way. And not compared to what women are capable of when they are not organizing themselves around being chosen. And mind you, that doesn't mean I don't love my partner. It just means I don't center him. And if I'm fully transparent, I don't know if you can tell from my content, but I might not be an easy person to live with. I once, after, I don't know, meditating and doing whatever I do, went and told my partner that I was severing our soul ties because I did not want to see him in a next lifetime. And I needed to say it out loud to make it so. And he was like, okay. Because we are not on the same journey. We are not growing in the same ways. And I've made peace with that because he won't stop my evolution. And if our connection means that I have to come back and do this all over again because I can't reach higher planes with him as a partner, then I won't see him in my next iteration of consciousness. And I also understand that there is a level of privilege in even being able to think in this way, to have time, to have space, and some distance from certain types of survival. But I also have children and a husband, and I am navigating realizations in real time inside the system, not outside of it. And that can make work on yourself very difficult because once you see the structure, you have to stay conscious in fighting it. When I meet women who move abroad and their main focus in moving is to have more dating opportunities, I realize that those women are just looking at changing ownership, but it's not to themselves, because ownership requires letting go of the identities that have been handed to you. The roles, the expectations, the definitions of what makes you a good woman. And honestly, that is not a small thing. It's not even a cute journey because it's about dismantling. But what's on the other side of that is far more interesting than being validated by a man, no matter how good he is. Because women give up so much before they even realize they're making a trade. And I want something else for women. Not in theory, not in performance, but in a real, conscious way. I want to explore what it looks like to free ourselves psychologically from systems that were never designed for us to experience love fully inside of them. We always jump very quickly to romance, to soulmates, to the idea that someone is coming to elevate us to different planes of a love experience. I had a friend back in the day, I guess we're not friends anymore, but anyway, I had a friend and she used to meet a new soulmate, I don't know, every 6 months. It got to the point where I banned her from using the word soulmate with me because connection could be real, but how we frame it, well, that's learned. I met someone when I was 13 who still remains one of the deepest connections in my life. And she has seen every version of me. Every change, every shift, every evolution. When I meet people along the way and they say, you've changed, she always reminds me, you are always just like this. And that's what it's about. It's not about becoming something new, but returning to something that was always there that we've forgotten exists. So I'm not interested in adding a voice to interracial relationship dynamics. I feel like that conversation is just too small. I'm interested in something deeper, something that might be uncomfortable, but expansive. And honestly, if you are also someone who wants to go there, really go there, not to talk about what we're leaving behind, but what we are building into. I am ready to do that. So I've been thinking of creating a membership space. People have been reaching out to me wanting to talk more. So I'm working on these things. I was sick over the weekend, but anyway, this wouldn't be for surface level conversation, but for real exploration of power, identity, and most importantly, what we become after we let it all go. But of course, I want to know if that is something you're into. So let me know in the comments, not just about what you are unlearning, but what you are trying to become, because that is the conversation that I actually care about. Guys, if you have not already, go ahead, subscribe to my channel. I look forward to this discussion in the comments, so ciao ciao for now.